Welcome to this week's Monday Zen and Zazen class. Today is one of those weeks where I will talk about the precious mirror Samadhi. But before that, let's sit together for half an hour. Okay, thank you for joining. I want to continue with the Hogyo Zammai in Japanese, the precious mirror Samadhi. Let me read and the text with. It is fully endowed with 5 aspects. And these 5 aspects are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, I would say. Or maybe it's the 5 skandhas. They're fully working, even with an unborn baby. No going, no coming, no arising, no abiding. That in Zen would be mu, or emptiness. But emptiness is not nothing, but it's fully active, here and now. Popo han han, or Japanese baba baba. That's the sound that a baby makes. Baba baba. Is anything said or not? In the end, it says nothing, for the words are not yet right. And I said a couple of times in the case of the 3 ranks by Tozan, these 3, the state of a newborn child would be the middle rank, coming out of the absolute, coming out of the essential. In the case of koan practice, that would be the mu koan. Does a dog have Buddha nature or not? And the answer is mu. Or Hakuin says 2 hands clap. What's the sound of 1 hand clapping? With these koans, it's about manifesting this state of a newborn baby. There are no words to express it, but actually you're always living with it. You're always living it. You are already it. And then there came this strange section with the hexagrams. In the hexagram double fire, that was this here. In the hexagram double fire, when main and subsidiary lines are transposed, piled up, they become 3. The permutations make 5, like the taste of the 5-flavored herb, like the 5-pronged vajra. And I think 4 weeks ago, I talked about the relation of these 5 hexagrams and the 5 ranks by Tozan. And at the end I said, I don't really understand why it has to be these 5 and not any of the others. And now comes the 4th rank, and I talked about that 2 weeks ago. Wondrously embraced within the complete, drumming and singing begin to song. They're different elements, but they work together. Penetrate the source and travel the pathways. Embrace the territory and treasure the roads. Penetrate the source means, well, to go basically where the absolute is, or start from the absolute, but in the case of a tree, it would be the roots. You start from the roots, but you reach all the branches and the leaves outside there, up there. Or you're firmly rooted in the here and now, but your eyes are also on the map. You see the whole territory. You see the relative world. Wondrous embrace with complete drumming and the ways treasure well to receive. Section starts. That's the 5th rank by Tozan. Let me read it. Natural and wondrous. It is not a matter of delusion or enlightenment. Sorry, I hope I'm back now. Can you hear me? Can you see me and hear me? Okay? Yeah. Sorry, there might have been a difficulty with my Zoom connection. Let me share. So now starts the new section, the fifth rank by Tozan, or Chinese Dongshan. Natural and wondrous. It's not a matter of delusion or enlightenment. Within causes and conditions, time and season, it is serene and illuminating. So minute it enters where there is no gap. So vast it transcends dimension. And I think here's where the section about the 5 ranks ends. The next sentence, hairbreadth deviation and out of tune. A similar sentence can be found in Dogen's Fukanzazengi, or also in the Shinjin Mei. And I think here the last part of the text starts. So let me talk about the 3 lines before this. As I said, I think that's the 5th of Dongshan's 5 ranks. And as always, let me use Bolleter's book to comment on them. Dongshan has 2 different sets of ranks, and this one here, Gata of the 5 positions of ruler and minister, explains the 5 ranks of the absolute and the relative that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks and months. Arriving within the essential, that's the state of the newborn. Here he wrote, in nothingness, there's a road apart from the dust. If you don't break the taboo on mentioning the emperor's name, you will surpass the eloquence of the previous dynasties' worthies who cut off tongues. And then rank 4, that's what we were talking about 2 weeks ago. Approaching from the contingent. And as I said, approaching is kind of an unusual translation, because here you have the Chinese characters. In Japanese, you would read them shi and to. And apart from these 2 strokes here, they're basically the same character. And I don't know about the Chinese, but at least in Japanese, they both mean arriving. But Bolleter translates this as approaching from, and this as arriving at. To my feeling, that's kind of unusual, but whatever. He says, approaching from the contingents. No need to dodge when blades are crossed. So that's, I think, is about the dual world of contradictions. So you're not afraid of returning to the dual world. The skillful one is like a in the midst of fire, like a bodhisattva who's returning to Samadhi, to soar to the heavens. And now comes the 5th rank. And the question, of course, is how do they exactly differ? Because what is said in the precious mirror Samadhi text and what is said here, they all sound kind of similar. It's, at least for my feeling, it's hard to see the exact difference. So about rank 5, he says, arriving at concurrence. Who would presume to join their voice with someone who has surpassed there is and there is not? Everyone longs to leave the mundane stream, yet finally coal heap. So for one, it talks about surpassing there is and there is not, going beyond distinctions. delusion, enlightenment, samsara, nirvana, going beyond differences. But then at the end, everyone longs to leave the mundane stream. So that's samsara. Everybody wants to become free from suffering. We all want to leave samsara. But finally, you return to sit in the charcoal heap. What could be meant by sitting in the charcoal heap? Actually, I think I showed you this book also a number of times. It's the German translation of a book by a Japanese Zen master called Hisamatsu Shinichi. And he has a calligraphy for all of the three ranks. For example, rank number 3 would be mu, nothingness. And rank number 4, this is a kind of pretty little one, this 4 characters. And the meaning of the 4 characters is the one at the top means ash. Ash on the head. The third one is soil on the face. Ash, head, soil, face. And that's a quote from the 10 ox herding pictures. Finally, you return to the marketplace. And there's a poem describing this, and it says, when you return to the marketplace, you have ash on your head, your face is soil. So basically, you return to samsara. But as always, it is kind of confusing that Hisamatsu associates this with the 4th rank. While with the 5th rank that we talk about today, it also says everybody tries to get out of the mundane world, but finally you return and sit in the charcoal heap, which also kind of sounds like returning to the marketplace. So which is returning to the marketplace in the end? And in this book, Hisamatsu has a kind of long poem for the 5th, a long poem here for those of you who can read Chinese characters. Those would be the Chinese characters. Basically, it means becoming old. I have completely forgotten the Buddha Dharma. In old age, I've completely forgotten the Buddha Dharma. Standing alone in the still garden, I collect the fallen plum leaves. So that's the 5th rank. And I don't know if it will make things easier or more complicated, but koans, I already said the 3rd rank is usually associated with koans like mu or the sound of one hand. The 4th rank, I don't know exactly, but I could imagine, for example, after you pass the koan of mu, the Roshi, the teacher, will ask you questions like, how do you teach mu to a baby? And in the case of this koan, it means to return and actually interact with that baby. How can you communicate Buddhism even to a little baby that doesn't even know words? And that, for my feeling, is probably the 4th rank, or that famous koan that I talked about maybe 2 years or 3 years ago in this class. We were talking about the old lady that burned down the hut. She had built a hut for an hermit, and for 20 years she had cooked for him, provided for all his needs. And after 20 years, she decided to test him and sent her young daughter, or maybe it was her grandchild, to bring him the food. And she says, when you give him the food, you should hug him and whisper some sweet words into his ear. And let's see how he responds. And the hermit said something like,
I'm like a pine tree sitting on a dry rock, and you will never succeed in making this pine tree bloom again, so to speak. So you will not seduce me. I've completely let go of my desires. You will never succeed in seducing me. I've already left samsara. I'm in nirvana. You cannot pull me back from nirvana. And the old lady gets angry and burns down the hut. And the question, of course, is, well, how should the hermit have reacted? And well, the answer is he should have reacted on the 4th level. He needs to come back to samsara and communicate it to that pretty girl that's standing in front of him. How can he communicate what he has practiced during those 20 years to the little girl? That for me is rank 4, and now rank 5 that we talk about today. Usually it's also associated with a koan. In the Mumonkan, I think it's case 13. Tokusan is carrying his bowls. So Tokusan was a famous Zen master. And one day at lunchtime, he was carrying his bowls and came to the eating room. And the cook, his name was Seppo. And that's, of course, the Japanese reading. I'm sorry, I don't know the Chinese. But the cook, whose name in Japanese is pronounced Seppo, said, I didn't hit the drum yet. Why do you come? Everybody is supposed to come after the cook hits the drum. That's the signal for lunchtime. I haven't even hit the drum. What are you looking for here with your bowls? And the Zen master Tokusan, when he heard that, went back to his room. He didn't say anything. He just went back to his room. And later, the cook Seppo said that to a different guy whose name was Ganto. And Ganto said, although Tokusan is our Zen master, he still hasn't understood the last word of Zen. And when Tokusan heard that Ganto had said this about him, he called him to his room and said, well, obviously, you don't seem to be very confident. You have no confidence in my Zen understanding. And then Ganto approached him and whispered some things in his ear. And the next day, when Seppo gave a talk, they say that he was a completely different person. And after the talk, Ganto was clapping his hand and says, finally, even Tokusan has heard the last word of Zen. And basically, this koan is about the 5th state. And as with many koans, there's these kind of traps. So when you have no experience with koans and you hear this, you probably wonder, what is this final word that Tokusan first didn't understand, but then Ganto whispered something in his ear and then he understood. All of that is it's a trap. It's a trap. Basically, this action of carrying your bowls at lunchtime, and when the cook says lunch isn't ready yet, you say, okay, and you go back to your room. That's the 5th rank. You're old and you have completely forgotten about the Buddha Dharma. You even have forgotten the Hanya Shingyo, the Heart Sutra. You have forgotten about the 4 Noble Truths. You can't even remember the Eightfold Path. You can't remember anything. You don't know the difference between Buddhas and sentient beings. You don't know the difference between samsara and nirvana. That would be the 5th rank. And if there's a clear difference to the 4th rank, then for my feeling, in the case of the 4th rank, the emphasis is more on voluntarily returning to the relative world to help others. There's more of this bodhisattva ideal, while on the 5th rank, fifth rank, you have even forgotten about that. I need to live as a bodhisattva. Even that is gone. You're just a normal, natural person. Okay, after this, a new part of the text starts, and for that part, we will also need a part of Dongshan's Bolletter's book. After this, Bolletter has these 5 stages of merit, and actually that's what is commented on in the last section of this text. But I will talk about that in 2 weeks. Today, if you have questions, anything you would like to share, we still have time. Please feel welcome to do so. Ask anything, share anything you like. Any questions? Anything you would like to share? Andre, please.
It's not really a question, just a thought. Not only the koans are traps, or there are traps in the koans. I have sometimes the feeling that all this Zen thing is a trap.
Yes.
It keeps us busy. Somehow it keeps the mind busy in order to what? For nothing.
Yeah, it keeps the mind busy sometimes, but sooner or later your mind overheats. And ideally, that's when you return to this place that cannot be reached by mental thinking. But at first, at least the koans, they give you a toy to play with, but you don't get anywhere. Your mind overheats, and the interesting part starts after that.
May I also ask a question? So,
yes, please.
It's been on my mind for a while already. Maybe it's somewhat a way to continue the line of thought Andre initiated, however, I'm not sure. I'm thinking, am I the only one here for who this particular text doesn't make much sense? I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm really sorry if it feels like, but the one text of Sawaki Rossi, it makes perfect sense. Maybe even too much understandable. While this one, each session I'm here, I'm like, what am I listening to? What does this have in common with the flower sermon? Aren't we getting too far away from the simplicity and directness of experience and like this thunder perfect mind of enlightenment, right? Maybe there are texts which are of the most interest for scientists due to they are too old, too far away from our languages. Like English is not the way this text was written, and it's neither it is mine first language. And like, why do we do it? Is this the way to overheat our mind?
I mean, I talked about that 3 weeks ago in the 2U class, try to make the connection. The reason why Sawaki Roshi's words are easy to relate to is because he's talking about delusion, and we know very well how delusion works. But Sawaki Roshi, of course, also between the lines, he always also talks about that's beyond delusion, which is beyond winning or losing. But the examples that he uses are from our daily lives, from our daily delusion. While this text focuses on the enlightened aspects, what Sawaki Roshi, for example, calls the identity that's unsurpassable in the whole universe. We all share that identity, but most of the time we forget about it. And this text talks exactly about this and about the different aspects there, that it's absolute and beyond words, but you have to somehow express it. You have to carry it back into the relative world. But of course, you're right, it's very difficult. The text is really difficult, as I said over and over again. Even I often don't really understand it exactly. And when I look at this commentary and another commentary, they seem to contradict each other. But I think it can be also worth digging into these old texts. Of course, I'm very fond of Sawaki Roshi as well, otherwise I wouldn't have translated him. But sometimes wrestling with a text like this, and at the end of 1 hour or 2 hours of thinking and discussing about it, you still don't know what it is, can also be a good experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to apply it somehow, neither to our daily life nor to anything else. I would love to, but do we have the apparatus, like the tools to really understand it? I mean, there are a lot of really difficult texts. Besides this one, I came across some of them. And it still seems to me that some of them are most valuable for the scientists whose job is not to practice, but to make connections between various bits of knowledge. I don't know. For me personally, it doesn't work. Maybe it will work later, but I have to admit sincerely in front of all of you that it doesn't work too much for me at this time. Nevertheless, thanks for letting me express it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I don't know, maybe the last part is a little bit more accessible, because there it's the 5 cycles of merit, as Bollate calls them. There are still 5 ranks, so to speak, but they're more step by step. So those are more closely connected to the process of actually practicing. Or I talked about the text 10 ox herding pictures, and for most of us, the 10 ox herding pictures are also more easy to relate to, especially the first 1 and 2, where at first you're lost. You have lost your ox, but you don't even know what you're looking for. Then you find the traces. You find books about Buddhism. You meet a teacher, and you have the feeling, oh, maybe that's what I was looking for. And finally you see it, you grasp it. The last part is a little bit more closely related to this, to the actual process of practice. But as you say, it's a difficult text.
And one more point, I don't mean to say that things should be easy, like give me a fast track to enlightenment. I'm not looking for something like that. I just don't want to sit here and make an impression like everything makes perfect sense to me with a smile on my face. No, it doesn't. I want to be fair with you. Thank you. Sorry for taking that much of your time.
Yeah, I doubt that you're the only one. I doubt that you're the only one.
You are not. Let me share this again. Last year, Muro did this discussion on this text in his German channel, and I always had the feeling, this feeling what you express now, sometimes some glimpses, maybe there I understand something, but then I was lost again. And so now I felt like, oh, I heard this before. So now in English, maybe now I will understand it. And you know, what happens now? Now I'm looking forward to the book. I hope he writes a book on it, and maybe then I will understand something. That's my feeling now.
I think we don't want to worry too much about understanding it, you know. I think it's just about allowing it to come over you and accepting that when we try and make these conceptual systems, they overflow with reality. So, you know, I think there's something very good about being in this lost, incomprehending state. It's fun. It's fun to be in that space, maybe.
Yeah, isn't that the whole point of a koan? You're not supposed to, it's not supposed to make sense, right? So maybe it's like a koan.
Well, yeah, that was
Maybe.
my impression too. I hope when we read today the Dongshan 5 ranks, I thought, oh, maybe it's part of my koan training, and maybe I will train with it later. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah, you could use all of these lines as koans as well. Yeah. Anything else you would like to ask or share? No more questions? It's 9:03 here, so if you have no more questions, in 2 weeks I get back to this book to you, more easy to access. And not in 2 weeks, in 1 week. Next week I get back to this, and in 2 weeks we get back to this text. And as I said, the last part is just a little bit more practical. It's not super easy to relate either, but maybe a little bit more. I think the central part is the most difficult. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Xuan, for hosting us here, and hoping to see you again next week.